Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I'm naturopathic Dr. Fiona Chin, co-founder of the Kidney Disease Solution and Kaigenesis. And I am joined again today by the wonderful Nicole Williams from K&I. Nicole, if you haven't heard her before, she's been a regular guest on our program, but Nicole is a life coach, but she has a wealth of knowledge and experience in the public health system, really supporting people diagnosed with chronic disease, including kidney disease, just know how to navigate the hospital systems and work through that so that they feel more empowered and so they have information of how they can walk themselves through their journey. So Nicole, always a pleasure to have you on our show, and your wealth of wisdom and everything that you share with us. I just always cherish our moments together because I always leave them thinking, oh, I've got some tips for myself.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back. I love sharing on this topic.
Yeah, it's been really great. We get so many great comments on the videos that we post up, and we can chop them up into little segments and give people really great information. So last time that we talked and we caught up, we were talking about sort of these seeds of, implanting seeds of how to really empower people mentally when they're diagnosed with a chronic disease like kidney disease or diabetes or cardiovascular disease, all those things that go along with it. And we really were talking about emotional resilience and just how to manage your emotional state last time. That was really the emphasis of what we did last time. So today we want to talk about things like adaptive thinking, right?
Yes, exactly. So just to quickly recap, we talked about kind of how to build awareness about like these these common thinking patterns that we all can fall into, but tend to be more heightened or exasperated when we're faced with a chronic condition. And so I thought it would be nice to move not just from the awareness, but now that you have the awareness, how do you really pivot or change your thoughts, right?
Yeah.
What are some real tangible ways to do that?
I think that's such a great topic because it's really, you gave people some really great tips last time just about meditation and breathing and, that real self-awareness and allowing the emotions to come up. And that's all well and good, but that doesn't actually change our way of being or thinking, does it? So now we really need to pivot and make that so it becomes not just you being reactive all the time and how to deal with that, but how do you actually start to think differently, which leads to different behaviors, different choices, and you being a different person, right? That's where we're going now.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. That is the path. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I'm excited. So I'll just hand over to you. So walk us through, talk to me about adaptive thinking. First off, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, that's a great place. That's exactly where I was going to start. So adaptive thinking is a set of strategies, and it's a way to help us reframe our thoughts so that we can approach a situation in a new, more realistic way. Mm-hmm. It's about applying separate tools, or it's more about applying a different way of thinking about a circumstance or situation. Okay. And it refers to our ability to pivot. I'll use some there. We've all have had a collective experience of needing to pivot a lot in our lives in the last 3 years, right? But it's just in the word itself, right? It's about the ability for you to be adaptive. But in this case, we're referring to the ability of your thinking to be more adaptive, more nimble. It gives you the flexibility, or it gives you more flexibility, and actually allows you to make a different decision. If you think of looking at something from like a 360 view, mm-hmm. versus just kind of head on, right? When we fall into some of like those common thinking challenges or patterns that we talked about before, those patterns cause us to think from a very narrow, lasered focus. And adaptive thinking steps back and says, wait a minute, I shouldn't just be looking at it from this place. Let me check this angle, or let me kind of go around the situation or the problem and look at it from a different point of view. And if I take a different point of view, do I have the ability to make a different decision or draw a different conclusion or approach it differently? So that's kind of the best way I could think of to kind of explain what that means.
Right. So it really takes that so what I'm hearing is it takes that narrow lasered focus of here's the problem and I have to look at it this way, just taking a step back and going, okay, here's the problem, but there's probably greater ways of thinking about it than I'm used to or programmed or habitually, how I habitually look at things. If I can just take another step back. So it's that meta awareness that they talk about in the personal development world, of looking at it at a bigger scale of how else could I think differently about this situation and react from there. Is that,
Yes.
did I get that?
That's exactly right. I also think it's important to mention, just from our, from a neurobiological perspective, our brains we're wired for survival, right? So we're going to step into any situation, with the intention of wanting to problem solve. We're gathering the data, right? We're going to figure this out. And those are not bad things. I think sometimes we tend to want to figure out problems in the dark. And so the other way of thinking about this is simply taking a flashlight. You're taking a flashlight and you're really shining a light in the dark and getting a better perspective about what you're preparing to handle or tackle or do. So it's kind of shining a bigger light on the problem itself.
Yeah, and I hear that almost as a map. You're going to a cave, but you've got a flashlight and a map, so you can actually see where you're going. It's like the whole landscape kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. That's exactly how I think of it too, Fiona. Like I'm stepping in a cave. What am I bringing with me?
So what does it look like? So we're diagnosed with a chronic kidney disease, and, I am a catastrophe thinker and I've been told I'm heading for dialysis or I need a transplant, and that's all I can think about right now. I'm just thinking about that. So walk me through that as a scenario now of how would I bring an adaptive thinking hat to that sort of scenario?
Yeah. So there's quite a few different strategies out there. Again, I'm bringing the ones that I think could be most relevant to support the audience that might be listening. The first is called a cost-benefit analysis. And this is going to sound like a business term because it's readily used, right, in business. And that's really listing out all of the good and the bad things about believing this thought that you're having in the moment. Right. Again, if we are putting on more of a business hat, we weigh cost and benefits in a business all the time. Every decision is thought of is how much is this going to cost me and what is the true benefit of doing this? But we rarely apply that to our own thoughts. So you're having this thought, you're stepping into this catastrophe thinking. What is that costing you?
I love it.
I almost can guarantee that it is going to pique your anxiety. You're going to notice sensations in your chest or, butterflies in your stomach or sensations in your lower back. Like, all of the hormones and things are going to start firing off. Right? That's what it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
What would be the benefit of giving yourself a moment to recognize that you're stepping into that catastrophe thinking and then trying a new thought?
Okay.
And it could be even a thought of, this is really scary. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I've just been diagnosed. I am really scared.
Is that almost like trying to get to the root cause or almost the underlying why we have certain thoughts about that sort of stuff? Is that
part of it? Is that, yes. So part of it is acknowledging the thought, acknowledging that emotion, right? I think last time we talked about the importance of not just sweeping things under the rug, giving that emotion, that thought, some space. You want to acknowledge it because it will keep screaming until you do.
Yes.
But also, it's almost, I almost think of it as, a child or a friend coming to you and saying, I was just diagnosed with kidney disease and oh my gosh, I'm so worried. You would absolutely hug that person and say, oh my gosh, that's so scary.
Mm.
Right. I hear you. That is so scary. What that does is it immediately can begin to calm the angst that we feel in our body, one,
Yeah.
because once we can calm the body, even for a little bit, we have then the ability to tap more into that rational thought and thinking. So you give yourself that moment of empathy. Maybe the next step is you're going to call your best friend who can help you kind of navigate and walk through more of what your problem is. Or you're going to maybe make a list of some immediate next steps that you need to do. Right? It's when those thoughts become ruminating thoughts and they start to circle and spiral and that's when it can become a challenge.
So it's really trying to break that ruminating thought by going, oh, there's thoughts under this, or there's a greater way to look at it. Here are the pros and cons. Like it doesn't help me to think just that way, but maybe I think that way because here are some of the benefits. So it's really looking at all of that. So it almost, I feel like doing this exercise almost takes the charge out. Like it takes the charge out of the action.
That is an excellent way. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. So when you take the charge out, you're not so coming from an illogical, back of the primitive brain state. You can look at it. You're looking at how you fight off that emotionally or that reaction quite logically and going, oh, logically it makes sense why I would do this. Now, is that the best thought that I could have around this? How could I do it differently? Sort of thing. So it's quite a practical application to take to it in a sense. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So we're diffusing the bomb. Okay. So we've started to diffuse that. What next? So we look at it logically and we go, okay, that may not be the best way that I can think about that. It's how I feel in the moment, but I can see maybe that thought and that process isn't going to be the most conducive way. It actually doesn't help me heal. It actually doesn't bring anything to me. So once I've had that realization, how do I then move forward from there?
The second thing I have on here is to begin to experiment. Ooh. And this might sound scary, but what I mean is to try on a new thought or a different behavior in response to what has just happened. So as we make changes or begin to change our thought patterns or practice kind of this adaptive thinking, it's important to note that this isn't permanent. Right? It's okay to give yourself or remind yourself, right, that you can try different ways of even approaching how you're going to handle your kidney disease.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many things that you can do to support yourself. And what it means to me, an experiment means is that you literally are going to do that. You're going to try something, you're going to see if it works. And guess what? If it doesn't, you don't have to do that again. You can do something different.
Yeah.
There's kind of a really simple exercise that I like that really has the ability to help with this. So if you have kind of a sheet of paper, right? Imagine a sheet of paper that you've broken up into 4 quadrants. And your top left quadrant, you're going to list things that you always do. So maybe I have a nutrition example in my notes, so I'll just use that, right? So you always have dessert after dinner, something you always do, right? Top left quadrant. Top right quadrant is kind of the parameters. So how you do that? You have dessert alone in front of the TV every single night after dinner.
Yeah.
Okay. Your bottom left quadrant is going to be something new, something that you've wanted to try. What does this experiment look like for you? All right, you know what? I really want to, I would love to have more fruit after dinner instead of maybe a sugary dessert. Or, oh my gosh, while I'm eating this dessert, I'm watching this baking show and I would love to try and make one of these things. Okay. It's right. It's a free space. You're just putting it out there. What that does though, then, so in your bottom right quadrant, you're then going to give yourself time to explore how you would do that. So in this case of this example, maybe it's looking up a simple baking class. They have a ton online now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thinking of ways in which you can change or pivot, right? How you do something and how you think about doing something. COVID is a great example of a major pivot that we've all had to make. As a country, our education systems, our restaurants, even like the gym, everything had to change in how they were going to still meet the mission or their intention, but do it very differently. And they had to really change their thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Okay. So it's almost getting curious of, oh, I could do something different. And it's getting it on a piece of paper. So it's because sometimes I think a lot of people think about this stuff internally, but when it's internalized, it just feels hard or not natural. But there's something about writing it down. I can see the benefit of that where you write it down and go, oh, yeah, I could just take a cooking lesson rather than sitting on the couch and eating dessert. Maybe I'd shut the computer off. And at that time, I maybe fire up the laptop and watch a cooking show instead or something, or have, a piece of fruit. Like, actually, that's not that hard, but it's so habitual. But writing it down feels like it moves that automated program almost out, or at least it gives you a break in the synapses
Right.
apply that way, right? Yeah.
Right. That's right. You're building in the break. Yes. And I love your analogy, Fiona, of kind of pulling the power source, right? So this is kind of like, part of that step of pulling that power source to that kind of ruminating thought that's not helpful for us. Yeah.
Okay. So I've identified it. I've come up with a new way of thinking, and I've written down some alternatives. Where to from there?
It's important to be really specific about the facts of a situation, right? Our thoughts are often opinions of a circumstance. I think we've said this before.
That we have thoughts are totally an opinion. And, I'm just going to put this in here. It may or may not be relevant, but where do they even come from? Sometimes the stuff that drops in, I'm like, and then you believe it. I'm like, number one, where does that come from? And two, it's a thought, but I believe it. And it's amazing. You're right. We just believe these thoughts and opinions and then make them, for want of a better word, like this authority in our lives, and then we stick to them and follow them. But half the time they drop in from nowhere and are completely made up. So I like that this feels like we're now questioning our thoughts.
Exactly. And, a lot of if we have a thought that matches a belief that we were taught, it's really cemented, right? It is planted in the ground. So it's sticking to the facts. And the only thing that are the facts would be the circumstance, right? It can be proven, but many times our thoughts are not. They're just our opinions. So it's asking, is this true? Another way of doing that is even to survey, right? Ask someone else. Oh my gosh, I'm having this thought. Does that even sound like that could be true? Right? It's starting to invite others to share, right, and support you in that way. And then I always come back to continuously practicing self-compassion.
It's so important, isn't it? Because you really can get quite hard on yourself or judgy, or then give yourself a hard time for having these thoughts and go down that rabbit hole. Then you're going to have to do this exercise all over again for that.
Yes. I want to share, as I was preparing for tonight, I actually had a personal experience that has happened in the last 2 weeks that fits into what I'm sharing. Of course, I'm always the student first to everything that I share. But I had kind of a health scare, and it's something that both of my parents also had a lot of issues with. And so when these symptoms presented for me, I first thought about my parents, who unfortunately are no longer here. But the first thing that came to my mind is, oh my gosh, both of my parents also kind of struggle with this. They presented with these same symptoms. My thoughts immediately started spiraling. And the first thing I did is I said, okay, Nicole, what are the facts? Right? You have some preliminary information, and that's it. You don't have a diagnosis. You don't have any tests that are showing anything. You have a symptom that could lead to something more, could lead to a diagnosis. The second thing that I really had to work hard at was uncoupling my experience from what my parents experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to do that a few times because, again, my thoughts were like, oh, but remember your mom? Oh, I remember she had that same thing, and it got worse really quickly.
Right.
And so I had to remind myself again of the facts. One, I'm not my mom. I have different set of tools that were not even available for her when she was going through this challenge. And so it was a lot of, certainly a lot of self-talk, a lot of self-compassion for myself, even as I was still feeling fearful. And once I did that, I then had the ability to start to maybe not experiment, but pivot my thoughts and what I wanted to do next.
Okay.
So I wanted to arm myself with information to support me. I recalled a nutritionist who kind of teaches about how to holistically support your body. And so I went to her website and started pulling information to support myself and identifying some strategies I could do right away to help better myself right now in this moment. And I cannot even tell you how much better I felt, because what I discovered, or what I remembered, I should say, is that I have some control. I have control.
Amazing.
And so these strategies and things that I teach other people and talk about, absolutely, I am using them on myself. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, sorry, keep going.
No. I was just going to say that was one example that came to mind. I thought, gosh, fits so nicely to really show what it would look like.
So you really took those steps of first going, okay, feeling and identifying the thoughts and writing them down into your quadrants, and then, really identifying a different way of thinking or being, and then maybe looking at acting on that sort of thing.
Right. Because it's not until you really acknowledge the thoughts, and really, again, I want to say making sure that as you're acknowledging those thoughts, that you are also addressing kind of the sensations and feelings that are happening in your body.
Okay.
Because in your body, as that stress response is picking up and getting louder and louder and louder, your thoughts are in many ways, it's reinforcing the thought that you're having. And so once you have that ability to calm your body, acknowledge the thoughts, acknowledge what's going on, it's only then that you can think more rationally about your situation. You can look at what choices you have. You can recall, oh, hey, there's this great woman who talks about this all the time and has a lot of great information that I can probably learn from in this moment to help me. Oh, hey, I'm not my mom. I have different tools that I use to support my body more holistically that I know will make an impact. So that's the whole purpose, is to get to that point so we can then really deeply support ourselves in the moment.
So walk me through. So once you've sort of done your cost analysis and then your quadrants and really had a look at, so cost analysis has, what's the pros and cons of feeling this way? Cost analysis, how my spreadsheet of how I can look differently. Then how do we, because it's almost breaking the habit of being yourself. You have to then not just think differently, but you have to act and behave differently to really cement a different thought pattern, right? Otherwise, it's just writing on a piece of paper. So how do you hold yourself accountable to following through and having those different thoughts? It's obviously something you're naturally good at, but some people really struggle with that and become unconscious again. So the next night they're sitting on the couch eating their dessert again, totally forgetting that they've done this thing. So what do you use in this adaptive thinking, I guess, for follow through and accountability to make sure that we are changing and are moving towards a different way of being?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So once you've identified what you want to do, how you want to respond differently, a lot of this it will take repetition, right? So that comes back into the accountability part that you just mentioned. And there's a few ways that you can do that. You can reach out to a friend or a family member, share with them what you want to do, and work in tandem with them to establish that accountability for yourself. And then from there, if we talk more about like habit stacking or really developing habits, there are ways in which you can build, identify what the cue for you is in terms of your behavior change, and tie it to a reward for completing that particular change or different thinking strategy or just your action is the word I'm thinking of. So in the case of back to our person who's eating dessert, right? She she thinks of this idea of wanting to go to a baking class, and maybe she reaches out to her best friend or family member and says, "Hey, do you want to go with me?" Right? So she's already connecting with someone to hold her accountable to actually do that. Bringing someone else in also opens up the opportunity for that person to say, "Hey, we went to that class together. Do you still bake? Have you tried any other techniques?" Right? You're bringing someone else into the fold. And then it comes down to, it's interesting because there is this piece of needing to almost remind yourself, "Oh yeah, remember, we're doing something different right now." Honestly, for a while, I think the best way to do that is to set an alarm.
Yeah.
It comes down to, it's a matter of reminding yourself that this is something you're doing differently. If you've built that into your schedule, then you can easily set an alarm to remind yourself that you're doing something different in the evening. Again, back to our example that we had before.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I do. I used to have a bad habit of not drinking enough water. So I have a alarm that goes off on my phone every hour and a half to drink water. And that really was the thing that I had to do to make a change when my phone's screaming at me to do that. So create a habit, right? So I think alarms definitely work. I like sticky notes on the bathroom mirror as well.
Yeah. And it's a matter of reminding yourself until it sticks and becomes a habit.
Yeah.
The other outcome of the adaptive thinking is we are then going to naturally generate a different feeling. And when we recognize that, again, we have the control to generate that different feeling, it will encourage us as we encounter another challenge or another circumstance to tap into that quicker.
Yeah. You really are talking about creating a different way of being and thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And I guess the first step, right back to what you're saying, is identifying that the way that we think and being, as you said, in the pros and cons list or the cost analysis, actually may not be conducive to the best outcome or the best versions that we can be. It's been really honest about that, I think. I think if you can really go, and that really takes a person to move out of their default programming, doesn't it? To go, I've always thought like this, hence I've always had this similar emotion. And has that worked for me in my life? Can I be really honest and go, this is really how I want to feel and operate and be in the world? No, okay. So now I'm looking at a whole new way of operating and being. And if you can see that right from the beginning, then whatever you choose, you have the opportunity to choose whatever you want to really start moving into becoming and being a different person. And that is exciting when you invite people into that space to go, you have the opportunity to change and grow and be different.
Right. Yes. Yes. That is exactly right. Yeah. And I would encourage as people are kind of trying these different things, observe how you feel in your body, right? Mm-hmm. When we talk about the experiment or doing the cost and benefit analysis, observe how you feel. Because that is what is going to be the catalyst to taking a different action and getting a different outcome.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's, we've talked before about people get addicted to the hormones of stress. It's really letting go of, because often our natural thinking for a lot of people is that really baseline default stress drama. Like people love drama. Mm-hmm. So it's moving out of that into a more self-aware and maybe a healthier, when you're talking about feeling into how we feel and how our body feels, there is a healthier, more holistic, better response that sits in a better tone in our body, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not easy, is it? Like you're really talking, like I say, about shifting the fundamentals of a human. So
yes. And it takes time. It takes time and it takes practice.
Okay. What else, Nicole? Is there other tips and tricks in there? I mean, it feels like that's a really good chunk. If you were just doing that, the cost analysis, the sort of quadrant spreadsheet, and then implementing those changes while being gentle and really feeling into your body, which then gives you the power to really choose thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors that feel good, which is going to generate a whole different type of chemistry, which is going to have a big on-flow effect. Is there anything else in that to complete that loop or cycle, or is that really where we're going with adaptive thinking?
Yeah, that's really the cycle. The only other piece I would add to that is to I've been meeting with quite a few clients who have done some tracking kind of in a very loose way, but related to that cycle, right? So as you're observing your emotions, understanding what they feel like in your body or the thoughts or the circumstance, really taking a second and thinking about over the last week or 2 weeks, how often has this particular emotion come up for you? What has been your response, right? It's maybe a pre-step to that quadrant exercise that I kind of described. It's really understanding over time if you see a specific pattern for yourself related to the emotions that you have.
So what I'm hearing is it's almost you're tracking for an emotional addiction by how you respond. And they may be different responses, but they're all kicking up, say, anxiety, or they all kick up suffering, or they all kick up depression. And so really the big underlying emotional, the chemistry of how because thoughts generate emotions, right? It tends to be the emotions that we get addicted to versus anything else.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. Okay. I love that. All right. Anything else you want to add to this before we wind up?
No, I think this is a really good kind of just a simple model and way of thinking about how to be more adaptive, what you're thinking, and kind of, again, feeds really well into what we talked about previously with those common thinking strategies.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. Well, Nicole, as always, thank you so much for being a part of our conversation and everything that you do. If you want to know more about Nicole and where to connect with her, you can find her on the KNI, so the kidneynutritionalinstitute.org website and you go down to staff, Nicole is in there. And I know she's been busy setting up her own private practice. So once she gets into that, I'll make sure to share all of those details as well. I just think you're a fabulous resource. And what I love about you, Nicole, is you're so logical and practical, and the steps are so doable. They're not up in the sky sort of pie sort of stuff. What you give people is really a framework of how to change who you are and how you react to situations, which is what we're talking about here. And I guess, I don't know if you share the same view, but one of the, I don't think benefits is the right word, but one of the things that comes with the diagnosis of chronic disease is actually looking at changing who we are. And that's one of the hidden blessings. It's an opportunity to grow and change. And these tools really, when applied around a chronic disease, give you a really nice, gentle, logical, practical framework to start moving towards maybe being a different human. And maybe that's the opportunity of chronic disease, maybe.
So well said, Fiona. So well said.
Well, I'll drop Nicole's details down below. Nicole, as always, it's a pleasure. If you liked the video, make sure you hit like and subscribe, because Nicole has got definitely some more pearls of wisdom to share with us. She really wanted to take you step by step through the tools that she uses, and this has been sort of step 2 in those really implementing seeds of change. So we've got definitely some more. If you didn't watch the first episode, make sure you go back and watch that, and then stack this behind it. Nicole's really starting to build out a really great model of things that you can implement in your life that are simple, that will really give you long-term change, which is why I love you so much as a guest. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, Nicole. As always, thank you. And thanks for being part of our community. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Bye.